I'm here with Professor Stephen Hauser, and he was on the research team of Kesimpta, and he just presented some awesome data at the newest ECTRIMS meeting, and he's going to take us through it all right now.
Damien, nice to be with you this afternoon.
It's great that you are here and can join me and talk about this stuff, Professor Hauser. So Kesimpta is this new, fashionable, awesome designer drug for MS, and it's exciting, yeah?
Yeah, this is very exciting. So ofatumumab, or Kesimpta, ofatumumab is the medical name for Kesimpta, is a drug that kills B cells that are moving around in the bloodstream. And this is so important because B cells are only a very small part of the white blood cells that fight infection and that are in our bloodstream. But we've learned that B cells are at the center of the inflammation that causes damage in people with MS, both relapses and progression. And treatments that kill B cells that are moving from the bloodstream into the nervous system have proven to be astoundingly effective for relapsing MS. And the first group of treatments that have been shown to be effective for primary progressive MS also. And this tells us that this rare cell called a B cell is at the center of the action in causing damage in people with MS, in all forms of MS. Now, the advantages of the newest member of this class of treatment, Kesimpta, is that unlike earlier treatments, it's a fully human cloned molecule. The other ones have a little bit of mouse protein, just a little bit, but enough to increase the risk of infection just a little bit of mouse protein, but enough to increase the risk of an allergic reaction.
Right.
And beautiful things about ofatumumab, or Kesimpta, is that first, it can be safely self-administered at home. There are 3 weekly doses just by a once monthly treatment in a very tiny amount of liquid that's very easy to administer under the skin. And because it's a fully human molecule, most people after the first injection have no immune reactions to the medicine at all. So it's very well tolerated. And that's a beautiful thing about it. And the other beautiful thing, of course, and even more important, is that it is just as effective as the other B cell treatments in MS, in that it stops new scars that we can measure by the MRI scan by an astounding amount, more than 95% compared to the other medicine that was used in the Kesimpta trials, a medicine called teriflunomide, and also about 99% compared to the scarring that was coming on when people first came into the study. It also blocked relapses by a very significant degree, so that on average, people had about 1 relapse every 10 years while on this drug. And we believe that this probably will get better over time and fall even lower. And finally, this really important thing, progression, that happens even in young, healthy people with early MS, that was blocked also very substantially by Kesimpta. And at ECTRIMS, one of the new pieces of information that we showed is that for people whose MS has just started, Kesimpta is really effective.
Right, you want to hit it hard right out the gate, you know,
I think so.
And just punch it, and then just see how the rest of your disease course goes, yeah?
So I think that that's absolutely right, Damien. And we have changed as a group from being overly cautious
Right.
to being more aggressive.
Mm.
And I think that one day in the near future, most clinicians may treat people with MS like oncologists treat people with cancer, with an idea that we want to induce a complete remission early on and then monitor and give maintenance treatment as needed.
Wow. I'm taking the pause there because this is a shift
It's a big
in
shift.
how one deals with multiple sclerosis and multiple sclerosis disease progression, and how one thinks about dealing with MS. The medical community, professors, doctors, it's evolved over the years. And at first, you kind of wanted to be the most mild thing that it could possibly be, and let your whole body do its thing. But these days, it's like, no, you want to hit that as hard as you can and as fast as you can. And luckily, science is running that race with us and working to provide us with medicines like these to help turn the tide on some of this disease progression. Yeah?
Yeah. So I think that that's absolutely right. In people with relapsing MS, we used to think that if we could stop the relapses, we would have complete suppression.
Okay.
Patients always would tell us, yes, we've stopped the relapses, but they're not quite as good as they should be and were before. Brain fog, fatigue, these kinds of symptoms. And
I go like this because I relate. I relate, doctor. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure, because so many people do. And this has the patients who tell us this teach us. And the beauty of this new model of treating more aggressively early on means that some of that lost function that we can't measure on exam because we're dealing with young, healthy people who are resilient. But we know that it makes a difference down the road. And if we start later, you don't catch up.
Correct. This is a race where you need to run as fast as you can, as hard as you can, as soon as you can. You were talking about numbers a little earlier, and I know there's some figures in the ECTRIMS study that are pretty impressive. Do you know some of those? It's like 89% less relapses over the 10 years, things like that. Can you share any of that with us?
So what I could say, when we start a treatment like Kesimpta, there's a rundown of disease that can happen over weeks. So, but if we look, once the treatment is fully on board and has been on board for a while, 92% of people have no evidence of disease activity of any kind on the drug over that year 2 of the study. And this is so important. And the MRI decrease is, as I mentioned earlier, close to 99% for reducing new scars. So new scars are really stopped. And I think relapsing MS is in the rear view mirror. Relapses are almost a thing of the past with these new highly effective medicines. And equally exciting, this not doing well, insidious progression under the surface is also benefited from these treatments. So it's a very exciting and happy moment for people with MS. The battle is not over, as you know.
Exactly. So that's the thing.
Progressive MS remains a big challenge.
That's what my question was. Like, oh, okay, this is great. This works for relapsing remitting, but a lot of the viewers have primary progressive. And the literature says that it works for relapsing remitting more so than primary progressive. How does your data and your experience with this all coincide with that conclusion?
So Kesimpta was not tested against primary progressive MS. The earlier treatments ocrelizumab especially, and in an earlier study, rituximab was tested against primary progressive MS, and they were found to be effective. But unlike the spectacular protection against relapsing MS, protection against primary progressive MS seems more partial. It's very significant. With ocrelizumab, for someone with primary progressive MS who takes ocrelizumab, on average, people will be ambulatory for more than 7 years than they would be not on the medicine. So it's very substantial. But what the earlier information with the other B-cell drugs tell us is that B cells are important for primary progressive MS also. And in fact, B cells are important for progression in every type of MS. And we have very good reason to believe that B cells that are in the bloodstream are causing relapses. And B cells that are in the lining tissue outside the brain are participating in causing progression. And our treatments are not killing those cells effectively enough that are lying just outside the brain, but they're doing it partially. So the very exciting near-term future is to do that more effectively.
Wow. So essentially medication and treatments are continuing to evolve because the medical community just has more time with the disease and more time to see how the disease affects people and how other medications on the market affect the people and how their outcomes happen down the line, 2 years out, 3 years out, 5 years out. And now you guys know more broadly about the disease and are working to make therapies and medications that are more in line with what you guys have learned over the years. Yeah?
You've said it. Exactly.
Look,
the other point that I think is really interesting is that we have learned more from the studies that have been done in real people and in patients, thousands of patients who generously have confidence in the investigators, trust us, and are courageous enough to participate in these studies. And what we learn from these studies then takes us back to the laboratory, armed with new information. And it's this back and forth between research and where the rubber hits the road at the bedside. Right. That's where the reality testing of all the science has to take place. We would have never known that B cells were important for MS if it wasn't for clinical trials like this one.
Yeah, no, again, you keep giving me pause because it's a lot of really good information and people's history with MS, people's history with their bouts of disease progression, or maybe I worked on that symptom and now it's back. And that symptom went away for a year, but now it's here again and it's worse. So things like that are sort of the world that I swim in. But the more I talk to people who went to school for a long time, like yourself, they're excited. And they're like, look, nothing like this has been around for, 20, 30 years. And we're excited to keep unpacking it and keep opening it up so that people can have the medicine that they need for them to just be regular people.
Yeah, Damien, I think we're halfway home. And the advances in MS are certainly one of the 2 or 3 most important achievements of modern molecular medicine in the last decade. The NIH recognizes this, everyone recognizes this, and we're now in a position where we can really not dream, but anticipate getting there completely and not talk about suppressing MS, but suppressing it in everyone and then curing everyone. I think a cure is in sight. And it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of support, and everyone needs to be in it together.
Wow, it's funny because every time you say something, I want to say something else, but then you continue to say more things, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's a great point too. Fine, look, man, you to help to unpack some of this data and why it's so important and why it's so effective and effectual. I'm not sure which is the proper word to use. It's a really good service for the community, and it's never you never want to have MS, but if there's a time to have MS, yeah, now's the time to have MS.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So there's essentially we've gone from using a mouse model of this thing. Is that a chimera? Is that what that is?
So that is one kind of mouse that is very important. But another important part of this is that the success of the B-cell therapies have totally changed the mouse models that we rely on.
How so?
Because the old mouse models said that if you killed B cells, you'd make people worse. And the new models are now models where B cells are doing the damage, because that's what's happening in MS.
Wow.
And the great opportunity now, we have 100 million different families of B cells in our bodies. It's just a few that are causing MS. It's just a few that make the oligoclonal bands that we use to diagnose MS in the spinal fluid. And if we could just find those, they're different in everybody, but if we could find a common feature, we could find out what they were allergic to in the first place, and also how to knock them out even more selectively.
Wow, look, Professor Hauser, this is me just kind of being overwhelmed with the amount of attention and the amount of research and the amount of just sort of head scratching that you guys all do in the lab to help us all overcome this thing that really just honestly takes our legs out from under us. Yes. The community, not only the community thanks you, but the people who watch this channel thanks you, because you took the time to really just comb through some of these numbers and make them all something more palatable. I think in my last interview, I was like, oh, multisyllabic gobbledygook, it's just something that I understand. And you are just continuing to do that. And for people who might want to, get off their old medication and toward this new thing, of course you talk to your doctor. Of course you do your due diligence and your research. But say if, someone's been on one medication for like 5-10 years, and now they have this new thing, how do you think that might help switch that game? Because I'm getting a lot of those questions. Yeah. So it just a general sort of answer, if you could, maybe.
So this is such a personal thing. How much does a little bit of symptom bother any of us? Wow. How do we feel about the unknowns with a new medicine? There are always unknowns. A great safety record over 3 years is not the same as 20 years. We know, for example, that interferon and Copaxone are safe over a generation of use. We don't know this about these therapies. We have very good preliminary safety information, but we don't know about very rare side effects or very late side effects that might take a very long time to come in. So some of this depends upon how each of us as individuals thinks about risk and reward, thinks about benefits of the treatment versus the unknowns. And so this becomes a very personal decision, but it's also very clear that the physician or the clinician can influence how patients might choose based on the biases of the clinician. So different doctors will have different opinions based on our own risk tolerance. So it's very complicated. And one of the answer is that people need to make decisions, as you've said, Damien, based on data, and then their personal interpretation of how valuable the benefits are compared with the risk.
That's really why I asked you that question, doctor, because I get that question so much.
Yeah.
And I know it's very personal, and it's about weighing the risks versus the reward, and whether you can live with some of the risks and for the reward or not, or just at least try it out and see what happens, and be willing to be available for whatever happens, good or bad.
Yes.
So that's why I'm thankful that you articulated that point so well for our viewers to really understand and come to, and so that they can draw their own conclusions. It's big time. No, Professor Hauser, thank you for giving us some of your time.
Thank you, Damien.
Today, man. Thank you for making this happen.
Great fun to spend time with you. Hope we can do it again.
Look, man, I'm very glad that this happened, and that it's good to sort of chop it up with someone who is on the cutting edge of MS research. It's wonderful and beautiful, because it's kind of one of the only things I care about.
Your passion radiates off the screen.
We out here. Hey, thanks, Professor Hauser.
Stay well.
Great work for the good man.
Goodbye, everybody.
Take it easy.
Keep up the fight. And remember, optimism and a positive mindset is half of the battle in life, in everything.
I didn't even ask him for no final words, and he just gave it to us. So believe that. Know that that's true. Also, bye.